Sup Sobers. Have you guys ever seen a dead body? And I'm not talking like at a funeral or like, just a normal like dead body. I'm talking about, have you ever seen some crazy stuff happen where you had to see a freshly unalived body? I haven't. I've never seen one. The closest I've ever come is when I watched Paradise Lost, and there's that scene where they show the three little boys naked in that creek bed. So heartbreaking. Quick plug, if you haven't seen Paradise Lost, go watch that tonight. It's on HBO Max. You won't regret the decision, but you will see some dead bodies. Now, the young boys in that story were about 17 years old, turning 18 very soon, and that still seems very young to me, but that is not even the youngest case of capital punishment being handed down in our history. The United States is the only place in the world that will convict people as young as 12 or 13 years old. In fact, there's been multiple life sentences handed out to children as young as 13 years old, and some of those sentences are still in place. The youngest documented case of a life sentence given to a teen was Lionel Alexander, who was 12 years old when he accidentally unalived his playmate, who was 6 years old at the time. He was charged as an adult and given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. That actually was an overturned case. I think in 2006 they overturned that case. So that would leave the next youngest person to be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole would be 14 years old. Similarly, in 1944, the youngest documented execution was performed on a 14-year-old boy. He was a young black male who got charged with unaliving two young white females. And of course, you guys know the history during this time period. Discrimination, a lot of racism, a lot of, hate. And so this poor 14-year-old boy was sentenced to be executed by the electric chair of all things. Poor kid. That's the most horrifying thing I could ever imagine. There's actually a number of cases where teenagers are charged with unaliving and they're actually charged as adults. The U.S. Supreme Court in 2005 deemed it unconstitutional to hand down an execution sentence to someone under the age of 18. So good change in the law, because I think that is 100% true. I think that you're so young that you're too young to be able to know whether or not this person is going to turn out that way, and I also think you're too young to not be able to be reformed. So with this new ruling, it leaves most of the states with really only one conviction that they can hand down, or one sentence, I should say, that they can hand down to someone under the age of 18 that's been convicted of capital punishment, essentially. And that one punishment that they have available to them is going to be life in prison without the possibility of parole, since capital punishment is off the table at that point. Now, I personally don't think that it's constitutional or justifiable to charge someone under the age of 18 with a criminal sentence as an adult. That's not to say that they should completely get off from any punishment, but I think their complete life being thrown away because of one decision or mistake they made when they were a teenager. Think about how many mistakes you made when you were a teenager. I made a bunch of them. I don't know. It just seems like a little bit unfair and a little bit harsh, in my opinion. However, one of the people that will add to the list of one of the youngest convicted life sentences is going to be Carly Gregg. Now, Carly just withstood trial this September. The crime that she was accused of just happened in March of this year. So this is all a very recent case, all very recent stuff. In fact, she's even looking at an appeals case here on the forefront. Now, there's multiple reasons why I wanted to cover this case, but the main ones are, I've already covered a similar case where we talk about not guilty by reason of insanity. That case is the Cannibal in the Garage case that I have in my Sobering Stories playlist, so go check that one out. This one is very interesting to me because, similar to that story, this is a teenager who is utilizing this not guilty by reason of insanity defense in order to defend themselves against an unaliving charge. Very, very serious charge, and this is not a defense that works very often. But I wanted to, take a look at this case because this is the same defense that Carly's defense team is using. It said that the reason that Carly did these crimes was over some marijuana vape pens, which to me is kind of crazy. It also shows that she was diagnosed with bipolar 2. And that's the same diagnosis that I actually have for my bipolar disorder. So it was very interesting to me for that reason. And I just wanted to cover it because, yet again, it's another case where we see that mental health going overlooked combined with substance use can lead to really tragic consequences. So let's stop talking about the case and let's talk about it. March 19th was a normal day in Brandon, Mississippi. It started out just like any other day for Carly, for Ashley, and for Heath, all who are just getting their day started. Now, Carly is 14 years old at this time. Her 40-year-old mom, Ashley Smylie, works at the same school that Carly goes to at North Rankin High School. And then her stepdad, his name is Heath Smylie, so not her biological dad, it's her stepdad. He's been in the picture for about 3 years. He has to go to work that day. Normally, they'd all leave roughly around the same time in the mornings to head off to school and work, but in the afternoon, Carly and Ashley would show up a little bit sooner than Heath would, because Heath was usually there till about 5:30, and then Ashley and Carly would usually be home, somewhere around 4 o'clock, since school was released a little earlier. Now, we've got this video showing Carly and Ashley getting home from school, pulling into the garage. To me, it kind of seems like Carly is slamming doors or like forcefully opening doors, so she seems like she's in kind of a bad mood. Now, why would she be in a bad mood? Well, it seems like earlier in the day, her and a friend had actually gotten into an argument. This friend was so worried about Carly at this point in time. He knew that she'd been smoking a lot of marijuana and she'd been getting into trouble more often, and it was just something where he was really concerned about her and wanted to bring it up to Carly's mom. Since Carly's mom is a teacher at North Rankin High School, it's pretty simple for him to do that, and he probably also had a relationship with Carly's mom and felt like he could go ahead and go to her with this information. And so he types up an email and sends it off to Miss Smylie, which is Ashley. He lets her know, I really don't want you to say anything about it today. I don't want her to know that I said something. I just want you to have this information that she has been hiding and smoking on these marijuana vape pens. And so I just wanted you to know because it's starting to affect her negatively and it caused us to get into a fight this morning. And so, yeah, I just wanted to be a helpful voice, and I wanted to let you know that I have her best interest in mind, and I just wanted to let you know so that you can maybe do something about it. Now, Ashley gets this information, and she doesn't really do much with it at first. She listens to what this other student says and doesn't want to give away too much information, and she also doesn't want to jump on the issue too hard right away and make it kind of seem like somebody tipped her off. So she kind of plays it cool, and it doesn't sound like she said anything until on the drive home. On the drive home, it sounds like she let Carly know that, hey, I know that you've been smoking marijuana. So I think that during that drive home, that might have put Carly into kind of a bad mood, or probably put her on the edge of her seat in terms of anxiety. As soon as they get home, Carly's mom, Ashley, goes into Carly's room and she finds 4 boxes of weed vape pens. She finds these boxes, she grabs them, she takes them into her bedroom. Then she proceeds to go back to Carly's room to keep searching, see if there's anything else that she needs to find or see if there's anything else that maybe she missed. Now, at this same time, Carly just got home. She said she let the dogs out. She was hanging out with her 2 beautiful golden retrievers. They're just these big, beautiful golden dogs. And she was letting the 2 dogs out. Not really sure what she was doing while she was out there, what she was thinking about. But right after that, she comes back inside with the dogs. It looks like she goes across the house and she enters into her mom's room. And from her mom's room, you see her sneak back out of her mom's room. And there's a camera in the kitchen. Now, this camera is in kind of an inconspicuous little spot. Looks like it's on top of the refrigerator. And it doesn't cover the whole house. It just covers the kitchen area. And then it covers the entrance into what looks to be the living room. So you can kind of see a little bit into the living room, but you can't see the entire living room. So this camera picks up any sort of motion, any sort of sound, anything like that happens, so that it'll pick up any intruders that come through. But it also picks up people who live there. So it's a motion sensor, it's a sound detector. So it's got all the different notification ways for it to start recording. And so it starts recording, and what it picks up is some of the most haunting, grisly, terrifying footage that I've seen in a while. And I'm just going to go ahead and play it for you because I could explain it to you, or I could just let you watch it for yourself. Now, in this video, it's kind of hard to make out exactly what's going on, so I'll give you guys a little bit more backstory and understanding of what's happening here. So Carly had gone into her mom's room, and in her mom's room, underneath her mattress, she keeps a .357 Magnum, locked and loaded, ready to go. Obviously, kind of like a protection thing. Guns are a pretty regular thing in the household. Sounds like Heath had a shotgun and an AR-15 on top of the .357 Magnum that their mom had, and, you know, BB guns and things like that. So guns were a pretty common occurrence in the household there. But she goes into her mom's room and grabs this .357 Magnum, which is a handgun. It's the one kind of has a revolver. It's got the, you know, spin the little click. Anyways, so it is a pretty heavy, it's a big bullet, big caliber gun. That's definitely something that will hurt you if you get hit with one of those. But she goes out of her mom's room, and you can see her sneaking across the living room, headed over towards her room. And as she enters into her room, all you hear is her mom scream, and then one loud pop, which you can only assume is a gunshot. And then you can hear her mom kind of just like moaning, but not really making too much noise. And then you hear two more gunshots. Absolutely grisly. Even more grisly is that she shot her mom right in the face. It said that she shot her right in the right side of her face. Just absolutely, grisly. Totally grisly. From there, you see Carly come back out into the kitchen area. She immediately proceeds to grab her mom's phone, and she starts to text her stepdad asking, "Hey, when are you going to be home, honey?" The text itself doesn't really spark anything. He doesn't really know right away that it's not his wife. There's nothing out of the ordinary with the text. They had been in communication earlier, and she was going to go to the store. And so she asked Heath, like, "Hey, do you want me to grab you anything from the store?" And he lists off a bunch of junk food groceries that he wants. The next text that he gets through is the one from Ashley, quote unquote, which was actually Carly, saying, "You gonna be home soon, honey?" And he says, "Not quite. I'm still at work, but I'll be home shortly after that." And then she just sends him back a thumbs up. But that's what you see her in this video, just casually, legs crossed, very nonchalant, just texting her stepdad asking when he's going to be home. The reason she's asking is because she wants to put 3 more bullets in her stepdad once he gets home. Now, how do we know this? We know this because, like I started our story off, Carly is frantic at this point, and she's texting up tons of her friends trying to get help with the situation. Nobody seems to be responding to her cries for help. She's not letting anybody know exactly what happened. She's just letting them know that it's, you know, some sort of emergency. However, there is one friend who comes to her call, and the name of this person has been left out of everything just for anonymity. But anyways, her friend decides that she's going to come over and she's going to help her out with whatever this emergency situation is. And when she arrives at the house, Carly is already waiting for her, and she says, "Hey, like, I hope you're not too squeamish. Have you ever seen a dead body before?" It's not really sure what the girl says, but at some point she takes the girl inside of her house and shows her her mom's lifeless body with a bloody towel covering her face in her bedroom. Now, I cannot imagine what it would be like to be this friend. Like, what? Oh my God. What did you do, girl? What the hell happened? Seriously, you killed your mom? Shot her in the face? What the heck? Seriously, I can't even imagine what her friend was thinking. But regardless, her friend is hanging out at the house. It's very shortly after that Heath is going to be arriving home. She tells her friend, "I put 3 bullets in my mom, and I'm fixing to put 3 more in my stepdad." At this point, her friend goes outside. She has her friend wait outside. Carly goes back inside where she sits in the house just inside of the garage, and she waits for her stepdad Heath to come home. Now, we've got another video here. This is a video from a camera that's inside of the garage, the same one that picked up the mom Ashley and Carly getting home earlier. It also picks up Heath getting home from work. He pulls up in his truck and he walks inside, and then you can hear just the absolute grisly attack that happens after that. In this recording, you can hear, as soon as Carly jumps out and shoots at Heath, you can hear him scream, "Carly, what's wrong?" He assumes that something had to be wrong. He assumes that it's not her. He assumes that it's just, there's no way that it could be her doing this. Like, it had to be somebody else pushing her to do it, or she's going through some sort of psychotic mental episode. Maybe there was somebody that was forcing her to do this, and maybe she was like being pressured into it by someone who had broken into the house, especially with the weird, the garage door was open when he got home, and then that other door was closed, so it seemed a little fishy. He had the gun, and it said that he reloaded the gun, and after he did that, he was walking through the house searching for somebody else that might have been in the house trying to, cause some trouble. Of course, he doesn't find anybody else in the house besides his wife, who's been unalived. And you can tell just how much he loved his wife by how distraught he is in this phone call. Not only is he distraught over what just happened, but he's distraught over the fact that he just found his wife with her face mostly blown off.
What's the location of your emergency? Give me your name again. Heath Smylie. Heath Smylie? Yes, sir. All right, Miss Sir, what's your phone number you calling me from? Did she hit you? Yeah, I got hit in the neck a little bit. Okay, so did it graze your neck? Yes, sir. All right. And what's her name? Carly Gregg. Carly Gregg? You still have a gun on her? From her, she ran. You took it from her and she ran? Yes, sir. She was screaming something at me I couldn't understand. I locked the door. She's out going on. Which way did she run off to? Ran into the backyard. And went over a fence. Ran into the backyard and went over your fence? The back door, and she opened fire on me. And was just screaming. Okay, just calm down for me. We got everybody headed for the way. She what? She killed her mom. She killed her mom? Yeah, that's what I'm screaming about. Where's the mom? And when I do that, she doesn't kill me. Where's the mom? Sir. Where's your wife? She's dead on the floor of my stepdaughter's room. She's on the floor in your stepdaughter's room? Now, was there any problems going on with is it your stepdaughter or? It's my stepdaughter and her mom. I don't know what's going on. The stepdaughter's in therapy for
Now, poor Heath, the guy was so distraught that the dispatcher thought that he was actually a woman when he first got on the phone. It wasn't until he said his name that the dispatcher realized that this is actually a guy. And he's trying to get all this information out of him, trying to get some sort of understanding of what happened so he can get police dispatched and send over the right help and, actually send over the right people. And while he's doing all of this, Heath is he's just so distraught. He just lost his wife. And now he's going to be losing his stepdaughter because, well, she's responsible for all of this. Now, of course, police are out looking for Carly because, well, why wouldn't they? They've got to find her. And they haven't been able to locate her. It's been a couple of hours. And finally, they've got a police officer that locates her. She's walking out of a drainage ditch where she was hiding, and she's soaking wet. So he's kind of confused, but he knows that this is the girl they're looking for. And so he picks her up, and that's where police start the whole process of booking her in and questioning her, trying to figure out what exactly happened. Like, why did all this happen?
I went down to Farmington, I went over there and I saw him, and I'm like, hey, she was so kind of sweet. She goes, I'm so sorry.
So was she trying to hold for me?
She was up there at the beginning.
At the beginning?
Yeah, at the beginning of Farmington up there.
We just came through.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go up.
Flop the hand, turn the hand over.
Turn it over.
And rub on the outside part around the knuckles.
Where do you want kids from? I guess you can put it in my vehicle with my key. The key fob is in my left pocket.
All right, now, so go ahead and take it. All right.
Is my stepdad okay?
I don't know, baby. I can't talk to you about this.
Yeah, I understand.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Please don't. What,
This is his phone. Okay, so, can you take her up to the office on the interviewer?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I guess, I don't know if you want to hang out or whatever, but the judge wants you to stay at JDC tonight. They've been informed of what's going on, and then she'll be brought over to jail in the morning after she sees the judge.
she has no idea what she don't even know about her mom. Yeah, I know. She's like, is my stepdad okay?
So I'm sure, like myself, the question that's probably burning in your brain is like, why in the fuck did she do this? Like, why did she unalive her mom? And why did she try to unalive her stepdad? What was going on? Immediately, my mind went to the same place that most people's mind went to, which is there had to be some sort of abuse going on in this dynamic. Maybe the stepdad was essaying her, or maybe he was physically abusive to her and she just finally had enough and she hit her breaking point and she finally just snapped. Or maybe her mom was doing these things and she just snapped. There's really no evidence that ever comes out during the trial or during any of the investigation to show that there was any abuse going on, at least from the stepdad or the mom. Everything just seems so peculiar and it does not make any sense at all. So what causes a 14-year-old girl to snap like this? Was it the weed? I'll say this, I'm a huge proponent of weed. It's a naturally occurring thing. It's legal in the state where I live, and it's something that's helped me along my sober journey in trying to manage my recovery process with getting sober from alcohol. So it's something that I certainly don't find it to be as harmful as the other substances out there. And with it being a naturally occurring thing, it's not a man-made process kind of a thing. So I've always felt better about it for that reason. But I've never known marijuana to cause this kind of psychotic break in anybody. Usually it makes you do the opposite. Usually you just kind of veg out. You don't really know what's going on. But for the most part, you don't see violent acts like this come about because of marijuana. So in order to understand Carly's story a little bit better, we've got to go back a little bit and understand a little bit more of her childhood. It said that Carly was super sweet. She was an amazing little girl. She excelled at everything, and she was very advanced for her age. And this is all despite having a really dysfunctional household with her parents. Now, Carly's parents were Ashley Smylie and Kevin Gregg, and they got married in 2005. Now, throughout the whole of their relationship, it sounds like it was just a lot of turmoil, a lot of up and downs, a lot of arguments, a lot of fighting, even some physical violence on top of everything else. And despite all of this, Carly was turning out to be an amazing little girl. She was super advanced in everything she did, and she was just the sweetest little human being ever. But because the relationship was so strained, it sounds like it didn't last for too long. When Carly was about 5 or 6 years old, her parents ended up getting divorced. This kind of left a big scar, a big wound in Carly's heart for sure. Not only that, but Ashley was really, really worried that Carly would end up experiencing the same issues that Kevin had experienced. It said that Kevin had mental health issues, he had substance abuse issues, and it said that he was also physically violent, not only to Ashley, but to Carly. He denies those claims, but that's what is said, at least from stories from Carly and then also from stepdad Heath. Because she was so worried about her turning out like her dad, she was extra super helicopter mom, and she was extremely strict. She wouldn't let Carly have boyfriends. She wouldn't let her stay up past curfew. She wouldn't let her be on social media. She was very, very strict, and she made sure that she did really well in school. Now, this seemed to be working for quite a while. Carly was extremely smart. She was so smart that she actually skipped the 4th grade. They just moved her from 3rd grade, skipped right over 4th, and went right into 5th grade. She was that advanced. And so obviously this girl is going to be destined for bright things. She's amazingly smart. She's a cute little girl, super sweet, has the world at her fingertips. She could literally be doing whatever she wants. I don't know. The world's her oyster. Carly even scored a 30 on the ACTs when she was 13 years old. I think I scored a 30 on the ACTs, but I was also 18 years old. That's crazy to me that she was scoring the same as me as a 13-year-old. So this girl was smart. She's a little brainiac. Now, around the age of 12, she started experiencing these symptoms of depression, and she was pretty open about it with her parents. She let them know that she was having some issues with anxiety, possibly depression. She was just feeling sad all the time. And so her parents got her involved in this equestrian therapy, which I'd never really heard of before, but, like horse therapy. But essentially, it's supposed to just help kind of calm your nerves, calm your anxiety, calm your depression issues. And then she also got involved with a talk therapist. Her name was Rebecca Kirk, and she was just utilizing therapy services, trying to figure out what exactly was going on. She was also seeing a psychiatrist at this time, whose psychiatrist is able to prescribe medication, and so they actually started prescribing her some antidepressant medication, which was Zoloft, pretty standard antidepressant medication, an SSRI reuptake inhibitor. And the Zoloft was prescribed at 25 milligrams, super low dose, and eventually after about a month they upped the milligram dosage to 50 milligrams, but over time she just didn't feel like it was really having any effect on her. It wasn't really helping at all. So she asked the prescriber, her doctor, to see if there's something different that might work, and so they prescribed her something different, and that's when they prescribed her Lexapro. Now everybody assumes that she was regular at taking her medication, but there's really no way to truly know whether she was or not without asking her specifically. Her stepdad says that she was pretty regular at taking her medication. She usually took it at night, and that the medication seemed to be helping, but after a certain amount of time, the Zoloft seemed to stop helping, and that's when she wanted to look into something different. Now, Carly was super smart, but it sounds like her home life wasn't the best. With the whole divorce thing happening, she split up her time between her mom and her dad. It said that her dad wasn't very consistent with his time with her, and when he was with her, it says that he was violent. He had violent outbursts. He was fairly abusive towards her, and she just had a really strained relationship with her biological dad. So much so that she really didn't see him that often. But in 2020, that is when Ashley meets Heath Smylie, and they decide that they're going to get married, start this new chapter. Heath is not only an amazing husband, but he's an amazing stepdad. He treats Carly like it's his own daughter, and he treats her with all the love and care and respect that you would ever imagine a stepdad could show somebody who's not his own kid. So just seemed like a really good addition to the family. And not only that, but it seemed like their financial situation kind of picked up around the same time. Before this, they were kind of living in a smaller home, struggling to make ends meet. But once Heath stepped into the picture, it sounds like he had a better job and he was able to financially take care of the family a little bit better. And then on top of that, Ashley's working as well. It seemed like having Heath around was good for everybody involved. That didn't squash all the issues that Ashley and Kevin had. In fact, Ashley was even talking with Heath about going back to court and battling for more custody because he just didn't take his time with Carly seriously, and it seemed to negatively affect her when she went over there. She would always come back in more of a depressed state, so she started to think that it might be in her best interest to actually fight for more custody of Carly. Then when Carly was in 7th grade, she actually got busted for bringing a knife to school. It was a knife that Heath actually bought for her on Amazon. It was something that he was like, hey, I used to carry a knife when I was a kid. It's just, that's something a lot of boys do. I remember I brought a knife to school a couple times, like not with any intentions to like hurt anybody, but just because I was like, ooh, I'm cool. I got my pocket knife with me. Since her stepdad Heath kind of let her know, like kind of enticed her to want to get this knife, I think she was like proud of it, and she also wanted to, bring it for protection, just a utility knife. And she had shown one of her classmates when she brought it into school, and it was a pretty decent size, like 3-inch blade knife. And when she showed the classmate ended up ratting on her and telling on her and saying, she's got a knife. So she ended up getting called down, and she got in trouble for having this knife at school. Now, their school takes this very seriously, zero tolerance policy, apparently, because this knife incident gets her removed from the normal school, and she actually has to attend an alternative school for the rest of the semester. And it's kind of funny because she's so smart that this alternative school is probably filled with a lot of like bad kids or kids that are really not really applying themselves in any sort of facet in high school or in junior high school. She's actually helping teach some of the classes while she's over here at this alternative school because she's just that smart. She's just that bright. She just excels that much. And obviously she's a good kid. She's trying to help out. Then sometime shortly after that, Carly is, she's smart. So all the kids ask her for help in class. Hey, Carly, I need your help with this work. Hey, what's the answer to this? Hey, what's the answer to that? And so she's like, I'm just sick of helping them. And I guess at some point, one of the kids dare her to go up and try and get the answers from the teacher's computer while she's away from her desk. And she takes the dare. It sounds like she's kind of people-pleasy. So she takes on this dare and she goes over and she does. She gets the answers off the test, but she gets caught doing it. So yet again, she gets in trouble, sent down to the principal's office. Her parents are informed. And her parents are starting to freak out because this is now the second time she's been in trouble for something serious at school. And she's really worried about her daughter. And she's starting to see these paths of her following her dad's footsteps, and it freaks her out a little bit. And so what does she do? Well, she overreacts like most parents do, and she starts to put all these protections and rules in place to make sure that she is not messing up anymore. One of those things is she puts the parent tracker app on her phone, so she's not able to use her phone after a certain amount of time, or after a certain time period, I should say. And then she's also able to track her and see whatever she's looking at or doing on her phone. And on top of that, she has a curfew now, so she's not allowed to be on her phone or go out after a certain time. Just really starting to crack down and make sure that she's following the straight and narrow. With this new restriction on her cell phone, it's hard for her to still be able to talk to her dad. And so one of the things that her dad says is like, hey, don't you have that old iPod? Like, you should just use your old iPod and get on social media, and you can message people on like messenger apps and stuff like that. So that's what she does. She finds a route around and she starts doing the messaging thing on the old iPad. Some people say iPad, some people say iPod. If it's an iPod, it's probably like one of the old iPod Touches that you can still get on the internet with. I know, I haven't thought about iPods in so long. Yeah, so that's what she's doing. She's utilizing this iPod to be able to message friends and message boys mostly, and then also to talk with her dad. Around this same time, her parents also find out that she's been dating this boy named Anthony, and they don't really want her to be dating in the first place, let alone this boy. They don't really want her dating this guy, so they really, really encourage her, highly encourage her. They force her to break up with this boy. They just don't want her dating. They don't want any distractions, and with all the other trouble she's been getting into, they just are like real worried and real nervous about this decision. So they tell her to just break it up, break it off. So a lot of the prosecution is trying to push this narrative that Carly had resentments towards her mom because of the boyfriend issue and because of all the controlling things she was doing. And that's what led up to this whole incident. But what the defense is saying is that there was no motivating factors. This was all brought about by just a psychotic break. One of the biggest points they bring up is the fact that Carly's dad actually struggles with the same mental condition that Carly gets diagnosed with, and it is a hereditary condition. And that's the other thing that really attracted me to this case, is because she struggles with bipolar 2, and I also struggle with bipolar 2. And so I just thought it was kind of a unique perspective that I could share, because I can totally understand what she's going through. I'm actually going through something very similar right now. I didn't unalive my mom, but I am going through something similar with my medication anyways. It's around the same time, with all the stuff going on and all the issues that she's been having, that Carly also starts cutting herself. The doctor, Dr. Clark, he actually talks about how she had been cutting herself for about 2 years prior to this whole thing. So about 2022 to 2024, she'd been, making these superficial cuts on her leg. And that's a pretty common thing for teenagers to do. Usually it's like a cry for help, or it's just a way for them to express feelings or express these emotions that they don't really know or have any way to handle. They don't have any way to cope with these intense feelings or emotions. So they express them in a physical way by hurting themselves. She started experiencing insomnia where she couldn't fall asleep, and if she did fall asleep, she would wake up multiple times throughout the night. So she developed this dependence on melatonin, and her mom was so controlling that she even started dosing out her melatonin, because, melatonin after time, it gets your system, your body gets used to it, and you actually need more of it to get the same effect just like most substances. But with this melatonin, she was taking one pill for a long time, and then she upgraded to 2 pills because it wasn't working quite the same. But her mom said, no. You're not taking 2 pills. And she started managing her melatonin dosage. Like, that's the kind of control levels that we're talking about here. And that's why the prosecution says that she just snapped and was mad because her mom was just so controlling and she couldn't handle it anymore. But as I mentioned before, she was struggling with anxiety and depression up till this point, and she was taking Zoloft for a long period of time. It was sometime in March, I think it was March 12th, they actually changed her medication to Lexapro, which is a different antidepressant medication. And it said that she had a real negative reaction to this medication, that she was more depressed, she was more anxious, it was causing worse symptoms, and it was actually causing her to hear voices and having these auditory hallucinations. She was so worried about these little spouts of psychosis and these voices that she was hearing that she even started journaling in January of 2024, which is just a few months before the unalivings. So she is journaling about some of these experiences she's having, talking to these voices in her head, not even just talking, yelling at these voices in her head. And she talks about how she's grateful that there was nothing physical that could have happened because she's worried that something might have. And so just to have these journal entries, on her own, sharing these thoughts to herself, really being super worried about what's going on in her own head, it does give a little bit more credence to the not guilty by reason of insanity defense. And I just want to play real quick for you one of those letters. The Dr. Clark actually reads one of the letters from her diary, and it's one of the more chilling ones for sure. And just kind of gives you a little bit of an insight into how she was dealing with all of this stuff and how she was mentally.
So Carly had kept a journal. It looked like it began in January of 2024, just after after she'd been found by her mother to have been engaging in these behaviors. She kept the journal through much of January and then dropped off. And then this, as I recall, was the only entry in March. So writing on March 12th, Tuesday, she writes, "I think I had a psychotic break earlier. The whole ordeal was quite silly. I actually spoke with one of the voices in my head. Well, I didn't hear them until earlier today, but I only do then. My particular friend and I were practically screaming, bloodthirstily and ravenously. Thank God, physical confrontation was not, and I think it's fruitively, possible. I sound crazy." And then she goes on to say, "I need to get back into the habit of journaling. Think it's good. I haven't quite decided if I'll bring this stupid thing to Mrs. Kirk, her therapist, tomorrow, but I I can't decide!" Exclamation mark. I think there was one particular page of her sketchbook. It's titled a 2023-2024 sketchbook that stood out. I will say I don't quite know what to make of it, but I find it raises disturbing questions.
What was it that stood out to you that raised these disturbing questions to you?
So this was, as I understand it, a free sheet of paper that was folded up and put in the sketchbook that was then found at the house after the incident, that was written in green ink in what looks to me to be a different hand or different handwriting than Carly's other handwriting. And it's written almost like a piece of creative writing. It's in the sort of guise of a soldier. With a different name, and she writes, or whoever wrote this wrote, "Anywho, I don't think I'll make it any longer." And then the writing becomes quite primitive and large and sort of scrawling, and it says, please help me, I don't something, I'm sorry." And then the next line, it goes back to the kind of more ordered writing that had been happening in the above paragraph, and I think it signed something like Germa. And when I asked Carly about this, she said that she had no idea what I was talking about.
Did you ask anybody else about that writing?
I spoke to Mr. Heath Smylie about some of the writings, and he told me that he and Ashley, Miss Smylie, had found several writings in a journal in Carly's room that had been hidden away, sequestered away, that seemed to be of dark themes, and they were worried about it, and they asked Carly about it, and Carly said that she had no recollection. Mr. Smylie also told me that some of the writing seemed to be in a different handwriting, but that Carly disavowed having written it.
Now, Dr. Clark here, he talks a lot about how certain medications, antidepressant medications, can be effective for depression. However, if the person is struggling with something different, they could actually be worse. They could actually exacerbate the symptoms, and they can even cause person's symptoms to get worse over time, or even cause new symptoms to arise. And so he thinks that that's what happened. He thinks she was on this Lexapro, which is an antidepressant. He thinks that she doesn't just struggle with depression. He thinks that she also struggles, like I do, with small bouts of mania, which would mean that she actually has bipolar disorder. Bipolar is where you fluctuate between mania and depression. And full-blown bipolar is where you fluctuate often. You're very, very high to very, very low, and you spend a lot of time in those areas. Bipolar 2, what distinguishes that from regular bipolar is you spend more or the majority of your time in the depressive zone. You spend a little bit of time in the manic zone, and then the rest of the time you feel mostly normal. And that's kind of how Carly described her symptoms, was being 60% depressed, 20% manic, and then 20% normal. And so I don't know, I would agree with how that being my situation. I feel like most of the time I spend depressed. I have 20% of the days, maybe even less, 10% of the days where I'm actually manic and feeling on top of the world. And then the rest of the time I feel mostly normal, but it kind of fluctuates between those different zones. So yeah, I definitely understood and vibed with that whole experience. Not only that, but I'm currently going through a medication change because my last medication made me feel extremely restless. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I wasn't able to do things normally. And so I just needed a change. So I switched over to this new medication. But this new medication has made me extremely aggressive, extremely short-tempered, extremely irritable, and just not myself. And I am feeling it so hard. I actually had to message my psychiatrist and let her know, like, this isn't working for me. I've got to find something else. It's really, really making me feel uncomfortable in my own skin, and it's making me super aggressive. So I can totally vibe with how she's feeling, starting a new medication. There's already that chemical shift that your brain has to make with the new medication. But then on top of that, if it's not something that's going to help you, it might actually be detrimental to your health. It might actually be detrimental to your mental health, which is what Dr. Clark says likely happened. He thinks that this actually made the symptoms worse instead of helping, because this medication was just exacerbating the depression symptoms, and it was giving her these auditory hallucinations. He calls them command auditory hallucinations, where they're actually telling you to do stuff. Usually it's do something to somebody. Usually it's unaliving somebody, some sort of physical violent harm to somebody else. And he said it's usually somebody that's close to you. It's not usually just a random stranger. It's usually someone close in your inner circle. So she had been on this Lexapro stuff for only about a week before the unaliving happened on the 19th. To go even further with the Lexapro situation, she was kept on that medication even after she was taken into custody, after all these things happened. And she was kept on the Lexapro for 1 month just to give it a good final trial period. And then it was actually determined that it was not helping, and her hallucinations were getting worse, and her symptoms were continuing to get worse. And so after about a month, they changed up her medication again, and they changed it to a medication called Abilify, which is actually more geared towards like schizophrenia tendencies, bipolar disorder, just those mood regulation disorders. So it actually seems like it's doing better for her. And she said that since she started taking the Abilify, the hallucinations stopped, and she's actually been feeling and doing a lot better just being on this new medication. So that alone does give quite a bit of credence to the fact that this could be maybe like a medication-induced crime, or just a medication-induced episode, really. But I guess that's what we're leaving up to the jury to decide. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, with her being under 18, there's only one option open if she is convicted, and she is being charged with first-degree unaliving. She's being charged with first-degree attempted unaliving, and then she's being accused of tampering with evidence as well. Now, where's this tampering with evidence charge come from? Well, the video that we watched that actually catches all of these events on camera is moved from its normal position. It's not on top of the refrigerator anymore. The police have searched this house left and right, up and down. They've torn apart the whole house looking for any sort of evidence or any sort of footage or cameras that they can analyze. And with the amount of people bringing over food and just like things for the family, trying to, help out with Heath in this dark time, tons of people bring over food, and all that gets stuffed into the refrigerator. It's not until they start going through all this food and eating this stuff and clearing out the refrigerator a little bit more, which is about 4 days later, that Heath actually finds the camera in the back of the refrigerator hidden behind some water bottles. Why she put it there, we'll never know. But she decided, instead of taking the camera and completely destroying it and throwing it away, she's going to hide it in the refrigerator so that hopefully nobody finds it and sees the video footage of her actually hiding the gun behind her back and running over and actually unaliving her mom. But once they find this video footage, I mean, that kind of puts a nail in her coffin, unfortunately, because it shows that she really did do this and there wasn't anybody in the house. And it kind of just shows the cunning, heartless nature of the crime itself and how she was just so unaffected and unfazed by what had just happened. So, I mean, either she was truly having a psychotic episode and that wasn't even really her that we see on camera, or she is just a cold-blooded, evil unaliver. During the trial, Dr. Clark talks a lot about how he thinks that Carly was actually minimizing a lot of her symptoms during most of the visits that he had with her, and that's a pretty typical thing for patients to do. I mean, either you are faking your symptoms because you're trying to get some sort of medication, or you're there because you are kind of pushed to be there, but you're not really willing or comfortable enough yet to share some of these deep, dark things, especially when it could make you look extremely crazy. It sounds like she was minimizing a lot of her symptoms, and so what he thinks happened was that she was not letting anybody know about these auditory hallucinations she was having. But there is documented proof from her past that she was having auditory hallucinations, even when she was younger. So the proof is there. He thinks that because these hallucinations were brought to light in the criminal investigation, that it was something that she was just hiding these symptoms from her previous therapist. But it is something that she opened up to him and the criminal investigative forensic psychiatrists about as well. Now, Dr. Clark evaluates her after the crimes have happened. He's hired by the defense, of course, but he is there to try and evaluate and see, is there a foundation for this not guilty by reason of insanity defense? And what he finds is that he believes that she does have bipolar, and he also thinks that she was experiencing symptoms of psychosis, especially with the auditory hallucinations, which was probably made worse by the Lexapro. But I'll let you kind of hear it in Dr. Clark's own words, what he thinks was wrong with her. And that'll give you a better idea of kind of her mental state at the time of the unalivings.
So what I think happened on March 19th is the following, that Carly was, at that point, really in a mental health crisis, that she was having significant mood swings, made worse by the Lexapro, that the voices were getting more and more of a problem for her, that she had documented in a journal entry on March 12th that the voices were very problematic for her, that she was having these dissociative episodes, and that day in particular, she wasn't able to pay attention in school. I take that as a reflection of her worsening psychiatric state. So I really see her as having been in a psychiatric crisis. And then her mother finds out that she's been smoking marijuana. And for Carly, I think for any teenager, it can feel like the end of the world. I think for Carly in particular, she so cared about her mother's approval. She's so worried about her mother being worried about her, that for her, this was a crisis. And so an acute dissociative reaction is something that, it's a DSM-5 diagnosis that occurs when an individual is triggered by some significant stress and they dissociate, meaning that they go off in some way, they're not fully there, even though they might on the surface act like they're kind of there, and they often suffer a period of amnesia throughout this period of time. The amnesia can last from a few hours to a few days, and then they will kind of come to. Many people that engage in violent acts report that they were dissociating at the time and have no recollection of it. It's actually fairly common. And one of the hard questions is, how many of these people are really dissociating and how many are just saying it because it helps them to escape blame, or how many just can't stand to think about what awful thing they just did. And there's certain characteristics that are thought to be more likely to make this the real deal dissociation rather than malingering. And those characteristics include a past history of dissociation, a sudden stress, sudden significant stress, often a close relationship with the individual whom you are violent, toward whom you are violent, strong emotional reaction, and no prior planning, no prior threats, and the absence of history of, I guess, criminal or antisocial behavior. I think Carly really fits all of them. The one caveat, I guess, the one thing I'd say is one other risk factor. People that engage in dissociation where it's thought to be the real deal, it's said to be more likely to have patchy amnesia, where they remember some things, not remember other things. And for Carly, it seems more like a total amnesia. So that's the one thing that doesn't fit, but the other factors all tend to fit.
Now, despite all of this evidence, despite Dr. Clark's testimony, and despite her age, on September 20th, Carly Gregg was found guilty on all 3 counts for all the charges, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In some cases, they actually poll the jury to just make sure that each person confirms their vote, especially in certain cases where it has to be like a unanimous vote or whatever. But it's something that they agree upon at the beginning of the trial. It's something that one party, either the prosecution or the defense usually requests. If they request it, then basically what they do is they go through each juror and say, is this your verdict? Yes. Is this your verdict? Yes. Now, in Carly's case, they had to do that 36 times. They had to do 1 time for each count, which would be first degree unaliving, first degree attempted unaliving, and tampering with evidence for hiding that camera in the fridge. And she actually got convicted and sentenced maximum penalty for each one. So life without parole, and then she got 10 years on top of that for the tampering with evidence charge. Seems pretty harsh for a 15-year-old, if you ask me. But also, I guess, bludgeoning your mom in the face with a .357 Magnum probably also is pretty harsh as well. But what do you guys think? She's 15. Do you think she should be sentenced to life without parole? Or do you think that there should be a limit to that? What do you guys think? I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. Clearly, the not guilty by reason of insanity defense didn't work, but there is new evidence that came out after the trial. And the new evidence that came out was actually from Carly's biological dad. He did an interview with one of the news stations, and in his interview, he actually talks about how he has proof that she was having hallucinations when she was younger, and he has proof that she was diagnosed with more serious mental health conditions when she was younger. And because he talks about this on this news channel, lawyers get a hold of this information, and they decide this is good enough information, this is new enough evidence that we can bring this into an appeal case and hopefully get this case reevaluated and retried. So there is no specific date for the appeal case yet. This all just happened in September, but they are working on getting an appeals case set up so that they can hopefully get Carly out of prison and not have to be there for the rest of her life. But I guess we'll see. Time will tell. But yeah, with all the similarities to my own situation with the bipolar thing and just with the mental health and substance abuse, I just really felt like this was a perfect case for me to talk about, and with it being so relevant, having just happened. And then on top of that, just the controversy around it. Like, what do you guys think? Should it be possible for people under 18 to be tried as adults and receive life sentences? It just seems a little bit over the top to me, especially for young developing minds and, people who have a lot more time to turn their life around and maybe realize the ways that they went wrong. So I don't know. In my eyes, it seems a little harsh, but I don't really know. I really don't know. Everything, I guess, is circumstantial, right? It's all relative. But as always, I appreciate you guys sticking around this long. If you want me to cover any other cases, drop it in the comments if there's something else you want me to talk about. And as always, I will throw a couple of episodes at the end of this one so that you can continue down my Sobering Stories journey if you want to keep listening to other ones I've got. And besides that, you guys will catch me next Friday for another Sobering Story. But until then, later, Sobers.
Oh my God. Let me show you what I